Step back in time to an era when royalty ruled vast empires and medical practices would make your jaw drop. The Habsburgs, one of Europe's most powerful dynasties, faced illnesses with methods that today seem utterly wild. Forget modern medicine for a moment. This is a journey into the bizarre cures and strange treatments that defined health in a world centuries away from ours. Get ready to uncover the medical secrets of emperors and empresses that are far stranger than fiction. Number 1. The potent power of theriac and mithridatium. The royal physicians of the Habsburg court, much like their counterparts across Europe, often relied on ancient complex concoctions believed to possess incredible healing properties. Two of the most revered among these were theriac and mithridatium. These were not simple elixirs. Theriac, for instance, could contain dozens, sometimes hundreds of ingredients meticulously prepared and aged for years. The recipe for theriac evolved over centuries, originating in ancient Greece and refined by figures like Galen, whose medical writings held sway for millennia. It was considered a panacea, a universal antidote against poisons, and a cure for countless ailments from plague to snake bites, from fevers to chronic pain. Imagine a physician in the court of Emperor Leopold I, carefully measuring out components for a fresh batch of theriac. The ingredients could include dried viper flesh, opium, minerals, herbs, and spices from across the known world. Cinnamon from Ceylon, frankincense from Arabia, ginger from India, and even dried skinkus, lizards, were all potential elements. Each ingredient had its specific role, often linked to the humoral theory that governed medical thought at the time. This theory proposed that the body was made of 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, and health depended on their balance. Ingredients were chosen for their perceived hot, cold, wet, or dry properties, aimed at restoring equilibrium. The preparation of theriac was an elaborate ritual, not merely a pharmaceutical process. It often took place in public with apothecaries and physicians, demonstrating their skill and adherence to ancient recipes. This public spectacle reinforced trust in the medicine and its practitioners. In Vienna, the imperial court would have had its own apothecaries dedicated to such preparations. The ingredients, some incredibly rare and expensive, would arrive from distant lands carried by merchants on long, arduous journeys. The quality of these raw materials was paramount, and their authenticity often debated. A single batch of theriac could take weeks, even months to prepare, and it was then allowed to mature for several years before being deemed ready for use. This aging process was thought to enhance its potency. When a member of the Habsburg family, perhaps a sickly young archduke suffering from a recurring cough or a courtier battling a persistent fever, fell ill, theriac might be prescribed. It could be mixed with wine, water, or honey, and administered in small doses. The belief in its efficacy was immense, almost sacred. For centuries, it was one of the most expensive and sought-after medicines, a testament to the era's reliance on tradition and the perceived wisdom of the ancients. The sheer complexity of its composition meant that few truly understood the individual effects of each component. But the combined power was believed to be undeniable. It was not just a drug, it was a symbol of medical authority and the pinnacle of pharmaceutical art in the Habsburg world. The reliance on such elaborate multi-ingredient compounds highlights an era where the complexity of a remedy often correlated with its perceived power. A stark contrast to modern approaches, focused on single active compounds. Number 2. The ghastly grind of mummia and powdered human remains. Among the truly astonishing medical practices of the Habsburg era, and indeed much of early modern Europe, was the use of mummia. This was not a rare isolated incident. It was a widely accepted and highly valued pharmaceutical ingredient. Mummia referred to powdered remains of ancient Egyptian mummies, believed to possess powerful healing properties. The trade in mummia was a bustling business, with mummies often smuggled from Egypt and then processed in Europe. For medicinal use, Imagine the scene in a 16th century Habsburg apothecary. Dried, dark fragments of what was once an ancient Egyptian would be ground into a fine powder. This powder, sometimes mixed with honey or other substances, was then administered to patients for a remarkable range of ailments. Physicians believed mummia could cure bruises, reduce swelling, stop internal bleeding, and even treat epilepsy or the plague. Its perceived efficacy stemmed from the belief that it contained the vital essence of the preserved body, imparting strength and health to the living. The darker and more fragrant the mummia, the higher its perceived quality. Emperors and empresses, archdukes and archduchesses, along with their courtiers, would have likely consumed mummia. It was a common prescription for both internal and external application. For instance, if a royal suffered from a severe cough, a small amount of mummia might be mixed into a drink. For external wounds or skin conditions, it could be applied as a poultice. The practice was so prevalent that concerns arose about the authenticity of the mummia being sold. Merchants would sometimes try to pass off freshly prepared human remains, or even animal parts, as genuine ancient mummia. This led to discussions among physicians and apothecaries about how to identify true mummia, often based on its smell, color, and texture. The practice extended beyond just ancient mummies. Sometimes the remains of executed criminals, or even freshly deceased individuals, were used. This was particularly true for more specific remedies. For example, skull moss, or Asnea cranii humani, was a preparation made from lichens that grew on human skulls, left exposed to the elements. This was believed to be effective against nosebleeds, epilepsy, and even mental disorders. Powdered human bone blood or even human fat were also incorporated into certain remedies, though perhaps less universally than mummia. The rationale often revolved around the idea of sympathy, the belief that like cures like, or that parts of the body could transfer their properties. For instance, consuming human blood was sometimes thought to imbue strength or cure blood-related ailments. This practice of consuming human remains, ancient or otherwise, reflects a time when the boundaries of medicine and superstition were far more blurred. The reverence for the human body, even after death, was intertwined with a desperate search for cures. In an age plagued by rampant disease and limited understanding of anatomy and physiology, the idea of ingesting parts of a dead person, particularly a mummy, thousands of years old, to regain health, speaks volumes about the medical desperation and the unique worldview of the Habsburg era. It was a testament to the belief that profound healing could be found in the most unlikely and macabre of sources. Number 3. The mythical medicine of unicorn horn and bezoar stones. In the opulent courts of the Habsburgs, where wealth and status were paramount, certain medical items were prized, not just for their supposed healing powers, but also for their incredible rarity and cost. Among these were unicorn horn and bezoar. These were considered universal antidotes, capable of neutralizing any poison and curing a multitude of diseases. Their value was so immense that they were often displayed as treasures alongside jewels and rare artifacts. The unicorn horn, often referred to as alicorn, was believed to be the horn of the mythical unicorn, a creature of purity and immense power. In reality, what was sold and consumed as unicorn horn was almost always the tusk of a narwhal, a marine mammal, found in the Arctic. Despite this, the belief in its magical properties persisted for centuries. Physicians would recommend powdered unicorn horn for everything, from fevers and convulsions to measles and venomous bites. It was a common practice for royal households, including the Habsburgs, to keep a stock of this precious material. Imagine a worried court physician facing a sudden illness striking a young archduchess. Perhaps she was suffering from a mysterious fever. With accompanying tremors, the physician, after consulting ancient texts, might prescribe a small amount of powdered unicorn horn stirred into a drink. The cost of such a dose would be astronomical, reflecting its perceived unparalleled efficacy. Pieces of unicorn horn were often presented as gifts between monarchs, a symbol of extreme wealth and trust. In some cases, cups were fashioned from narwhal tusk, believed to neutralize any poison poured into them, a crucial safeguard in an age rife with political intrigue and fear of assassination. The belief in its purifying properties was so strong that drinking vessels made of alicorn were common in royal treasuries. Alongside unicorn horn, bezoar stones held a similar, almost legendary status. A bezoar is a mass, often hair or plant fibers found in the digestive system of certain animals, most commonly goats. These peculiar concretions were believed to have antitoxic properties capable of drawing out poisons from the body. The word bezoar itself comes from the Persian padzarard, meaning antidote. Like unicorn horn, bezoar stones were incredibly expensive and rare, making them highly desirable status symbols as well as medical remedies. When a Habsburg ruler or a member of their immediate family was suspected of being poisoned or was suffering from a severe infectious disease, a bezoar stone might be brought forth. A small piece would be carefully scraped or ground off the stone and dissolved in liquid, then administered to the patient. Some physicians would even immerse an entire bezoar stone in a glass of water for a period, allowing the water to absorb its supposed healing properties, and then have the patient drink the infused water. The effectiveness of these stones was, of course, entirely based on belief rather than any scientific principle. Yet, their presence in royal medicine chests and their consistent use for centuries highlight a medical landscape where perceived rarity and mystical origins held as much sway as empirical observation. The pursuit of these fantastical cures demonstrates a profound reliance on ancient wisdom and a yearning for powerful universal solutions in a world where effective treatments were often elusive. Number 4. The risky regimen of mercury and antimony. The Habsburg Empire, spanning vast territories and diverse populations, was not immune to widespread diseases. Syphilis, a sexually transmitted infection, became a devastating epidemic across Europe, starting in the late 15th century. It presented physicians with a complex challenge, and their chosen remedy for centuries was often mercury. The use of mercury, a heavy metal known today for its extreme toxicity, was a common and accepted treatment, despite its often horrific side effects. Imagine a patient, perhaps a courtier, or even a member of the royal guard, suffering from the painful sores, rashes, and fever characteristic of syphilis. The physician, following the established medical knowledge of the time, would prescribe a course of mercury. This could take several forms. Patients might ingest mercury in pills or as a liquid. More commonly, they would undergo a mercury cure involving external application. This often meant rubbing mercury ointments directly onto the skin, or undergoing a process called salivation, where mercury vapor was inhaled in specially constructed steam baths. The goal of salivation was to induce excessive drooling, sometimes producing quarts of saliva per day, which was believed to expel the disease from the body. The side effects were brutal. Patients would suffer from severe mouth ulcers, tooth loss, tremors, neurological damage, kidney failure, and extreme pain. Many died, not from syphilis itself, but from mercury poisoning. Despite these obvious and debilitating effects, physicians continued to use mercury, sometimes in escalating doses, believing that the suffering was a sign that the treatment was working, and that the disease was being expelled. The famous Habsburg jaw, or prognathism, a genetic trait, may have been exacerbated in some individuals by syphilis and its mercury treatments, though this connection is still debated by historians and medical scholars. Antimony, another highly toxic heavy metal, also found its place in the Habsburg medical arsenal. Antimony compounds like tartar emetic, antimony potassium tartrate, were used as powerful emetics and purgatives, intended to induce vomiting and diarrhea. Physicians believed that these violent expulsions would rid the body of excess humors or disease-causing agents. A patient suffering from a fever, for instance, might be given a dose of antimony to provoke vomiting, believed to restore the balance of the humors. The use of antimony was controversial, even in its own time, with some physicians arguing against its harsh effects, but it remained a popular remedy for centuries. The physicians serving the Habsburg court would have diligently applied these dangerous substances, convinced of their efficacy. Records from imperial apothecaries would list purchases of mercury and various antimony preparations. The sheer bravery or perhaps desperation of patients willing to undergo such torturous treatments marks the lack of effective alternatives and the prevailing belief in the power of strong, often violent, remedies. The lingering effects of mercury poisoning on patients, including potential neurological issues and disfigurement, were a grim reality of seeking treatment. In the Habsburg era, the medical landscape was often a perilous journey where the cure could be as dangerous, if not more so, than the disease itself. The continued use of these potent, harmful substances for centuries, despite evident adverse reactions, demonstrates the slow pace of traditional change and the deep entrenchment of traditional practices. Number 5. The humoral balance through bleeding and cupping. Among the most universal and persistent medical practices throughout the Habsburg reign, and indeed across Europe, for over 2 millennia, was bloodletting. This practice was deeply rooted in the ancient theory of the 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Health was believed to depend on the perfect balance of these humors within the body. When a person fell ill, it was often attributed to an excess or imbalance of one or more of these vital fluids. The remedy was simple yet profound in its impact. Remove the offending humor. Imagine a Habsburg emperor, perhaps Ferdinand II, feeling sluggish or suffering from a fever. His personal physician would immediately turn to bloodletting. A sharp lancet, a small two-edged blade, would be used to open a vein typically in the arm or neck, allowing a precise amount of blood to flow into a graduated bowl. The amount removed could vary significantly from a few ounces to a pint or more, depending on the severity of the illness and the physician's judgment. It was believed that removing bad blood would restore the body's natural equilibrium, alleviate fevers, reduce inflammation, and even calm agitated minds. For conditions like apoplexy or high blood pressure, copious bleedings were often prescribed, sometimes with fatal consequences for already weakened patients. Cupping was another related method of bloodletting, though it could also be used without drawing blood. In wet cupping, a glass cup would be heated, creating a vacuum when placed on the skin. This suction would draw blood to the surface, and then small incisions would be made before the cup was reapplied, pulling out blood. Dry cupping involved only the suction, believed to draw out noxious humors, or reduce localized swelling without blood. These practices were applied to every segment of society, from the lowliest peasant to the most exalted monarch. Physicians kept careful records of the amount of blood removed, tracking the patient's response and determining if further bleedings were necessary. The Habsburg family, known for its extensive medical records, provides ample evidence of frequent bloodletting. Emperor Charles V, who suffered from gout and various ailments throughout his life, underwent numerous bleedings. His physicians would regularly bleed him to relieve pain and discomfort, often multiple times within a short period. Archduchess Maria Christina, a daughter of Empress Maria Theresa, reportedly underwent frequent bloodletting sessions for various complaints. The consistency and frequency of these procedures, even for minor discomforts, highlight a deep-seated belief in humoral theory. Bloodletting was not just a reactive treatment for illness. It was also sometimes used as a preventative measure, or for general purging of the body, particularly in spring or autumn. It was considered a crucial part of maintaining health, much like modern dietary regimens or exercise. The tools of the trade, lancets, leeches, scarificators, and cupping glasses, were meticulously maintained by barbers and surgeons who often carried out the actual procedures under the physician's direction. The sight of blood, far from being alarming, was an accepted and expected part of healthcare. This pervasive reliance on bloodletting for ailments ranging from common colds to life-threatening diseases demonstrates a profound disconnect from our modern understanding of physiology. Yet it remained the cornerstone of medical practice for centuries within the Habsburg domains. Number 6. The alchemical quest for gold potions and quintessences. While not as widely documented as bloodletting or mummia, the pursuit of alchemical gold potions and quintessences held a fascinating, if sometimes clandestine, place in the Habsburg medical world. Alchemy, in the early modern period, was not solely about turning base metals into gold. It also encompassed the search for the elixir of life, a universal panacea, and powerful medicinal compounds derived from minerals and metals. Many royal courts, including the Habsburgs, harbored alchemists who worked under royal patronage, promising both wealth and eternal health. Emperor Rudolf II, a fervent patron of the arts and sciences, and particularly obsessed with alchemy and its mystical potential. His court in Prague became a magnet for alchemists, astrologers, and occultists from across Europe. These practitioners often blended scientific experimentation with esoteric beliefs. They sought not just physical gold, but also a philosophical gold that could cure all diseases and prolong life indefinitely. Among their endeavors was the creation of potable gold, or aurum potabile, a solution or suspension of gold in liquid, often believed to possess immense healing powers. The process of creating potable gold was incredibly complex and varied, often involving dissolving gold in aqua regia, a mixture of nitric and hydrochloric acids, or other strong chemicals, then performing various distillations and purifications. The resulting liquid was then carefully administered to patients, often in tiny precious drops. It was believed to strengthen the heart, purify the blood, and restore youthful vigor. While modern science knows that elemental gold is inert and would pass through the body without effect, the alchemists of the era believed that, by transforming gold into a potable form, its inherent virtues could be unlocked and absorbed by the body. Beyond gold, alchemists also sought quintessences, highly concentrated forms of substances believed to contain their purest and most potent medicinal properties. This could apply to herbs, minerals, or even animal products. The alchemist's laboratory, often located within the castle grounds, would be filled with retorts, alembics, and distillation apparatus where these intricate and often dangerous experiments were carried out. The pursuit of these quintessences was a blend of early chemistry, pharmacology, and mystical thought. The belief was that by extracting the essence of a substance, its healing power could be magnified exponentially. The Habsburg interest in alchemy was not merely for show or intellectual curiosity. It was a serious endeavor driven by the constant threat of illness and the desire for remedies far more powerful than traditional herbal medicines or bloodletting. Though many alchemical experiments yielded no true medical breakthroughs, and some even produced toxic compounds, the search for these miraculous elixirs provided a fertile ground for early chemical and pharmaceutical development. The enduring fascination with gold as a medicinal agent from ancient China to Renaissance Europe reflects a universal human desire for immortality and perfect health, a desire the alchemists of the Habsburg court tirelessly, if often fruitlessly, pursued. The stories of alchemists like John Dee or Edward Kelly, figures who spent time in Rudolf II's court, highlight the desperate, mystical approach to medicine prevalent among the powerful seeking the ultimate cure. Number 7. The digestive dominance of emetics and purgatives. In the Habsburg world, the internal workings of the body were seen through the lens of humoral theory, and any illness was often attributed to an imbalance or excess within the digestive system. This led to a widespread and often aggressive reliance on emetics, substances that induce vomiting, and purgatives, strong laxatives that cause bowel movements. These practices were central to the physician's Stukat belief to cleanse the body of noxious humors and expel disease-causing agents. Imagine a Habsburg courtier suffering from what appeared to be indigestion, or perhaps a severe migraine. The physician, convinced that the ailment stemmed from an accumulation of bad humors in the stomach or intestines, would immediately prescribe a powerful emetic or purgative. One common and potent substance used was ipecacuanha, often simply called ipecac, which causes violent vomiting. Another popular purgative was rhubarb, though often in very strong doses. More extreme options included senna, jalap, or even certain mineral salt. The aim was to provoke a rapid and thorough expulsion from either end of the digestive tract, regardless of the patient's discomfort or debilitation. The use of these agents was not limited to digestive complaints. If a patient had a fever, a cough, or even a skin rash, an emetic or purgative might be prescribed. The reasoning was that these symptoms were outward manifestations of internal imbalances, and by clearing the digestive system, the underlying cause would be addressed. It was a brutal and often exhausting process for the patient, who might endure hours of vomiting or relentless diarrhea. Physicians believed that the more violent the expulsion, the more effective the treatment, as it indicated a thorough purging of the offending humors. For instance, records of Empress Maria Theresa's health indicate that she, like many of her contemporaries, was often subjected to aggressive purging. Her physicians would prescribe various emetics and purgatives for her numerous ailments, often in conjunction with bloodletting. The belief was that these powerful interventions would clear her system and restore balance. The routine application of these methods, even for individuals in weakened states, deposed the era's medical philosophy that the body needed to be actively cleansed to regain health. The administration of these remedies was a common part of everyday life. Apothecaries would meticulously prepare different strengths of emetics and purgatives, often flavoring them with honey or sugar to make them slightly more palatable. Though their effects remained unpleasant, the patient's response, including the color and consistency of the expelled matter, was often carefully observed by physicians for diagnostic clues. This fixation on bodily expulsions reflects a pre-bacteriological understanding of disease, where visible waste products were seen as direct evidence of illness leaving the body. The relentless focus on cleansing the digestive system through these forceful means stands as a stark reminder of the often harsh and uncomfortable realities of medical treatment in the Habsburg world. Number 8. The rigorous ritual of urine diagnosis. In the intricate world of Habsburg medicine, where scientific understanding often intertwined with ancient wisdom, the examination of urine was far more than a simple diagnostic test. It was a cornerstone of medical practice, a highly skilled art known as uroscopy, believed to reveal the patient's internal state humors and even predict the course of their illness. Physicians, particularly those at the royal court, would spend considerable time scrutinizing a flask of a patient's urine, drawing conclusions that dictated treatment. Imagine a physician in the court of Emperor Maximilian II receiving a specimen of urine from a troubled archduchess. The urine would be presented in a special glass flask, sometimes called a matula, designed for this specific purpose. The physician would then hold the flask up to the light, observing its color, clarity, and any sediments. A whole palette of colors, from pale straw to deep red or black, each held specific diagnostic meaning. For example, pale urine might indicate a cold humor, while dark urine suggested heat. Cloudy urine with sediments could point to various imbalances or fevers. Beyond color, the physician would meticulously examine the urine for different regions. The top layer, called the cercor, was believed to relate to the head and brain. The middle layer, the flame, corresponded to the heart and lungs. The bottom, or fundus, represented the liver, bladder, and other lower organs. Any floating particles called nephrites were thought to indicate kidney stones. Even the smell and taste of the urine were sometimes considered, though this became less common over time. The prophet, a skilled practitioner of uroscopy, often gained a reputation based on their ability to interpret these subtle signs. This elaborate system of urine analysis was taught in medical schools throughout Europe, and was a standard expectation for any learned physician. It formed a critical part of the initial diagnosis, guiding subsequent treatments, like bloodletting, purging, or the administration of specific herbal remedies. For instance, if the urine indicated an excess of hot yellow bile, the physician might prescribe cooling herbs or a mild purgative to restore balance. The royal family's health was constantly monitored through uroscopy. Physicians would regularly examine the urine of emperors, empresses, and their children, sometimes multiple times a day during periods of illness. The precision and detail involved in uroscopy highlight the era's reliance on empirical observation, albeit through a very different interpretive framework than today, while modern medicine utilizes urinalysis for chemical and microscopic examination. The Habsburg practice of uroscopy was based on a visually interpretive, holistic, and humoral understanding of the body. The absence of microscopic tools meant that diagnosis relied heavily on the physician's keen eye and knowledge of an elaborate centuries-old system of interpretation. The emphasis on urine, a readily available bodily fluid, as a key to unlocking the body's secrets, stands as a testament to the ingenuity and limitations of medical practice in the Habsburg age, where every subtle change in bodily output held significant meaning for health.